Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to GCPA Live. I'm Paul Pagano, co-founder and executive director of Gateway Center for Performing Arts. Tonight, we have a supersized reunion for Spring Awakening. But before we get into talking about the production of Spring Awakening, let's first go ahead and bring out Marquise Powell, GCPA alum and local business owner. Marquise, how you doing tonight?
I'm feeling electric. How you doing tonight?
Feeling electric. That's great. That's fantastic.
Yes. How you doing today?
Tell me why it is that you're feeling electric tonight.
I'm working on my business, and there are some things in development. I'm like, okay, yes, the ball is rolling in the right direction. I'm meeting with certain people. I'm getting calls. So I just got a phone call. So I'm like really feeling really amped up and pumped up. I want to walk around, strut around a little bit, but yeah, so that's electric.
I can absolutely relate to those days when things are just clicking and a lot of great stuff happens and you're just energized. That's fantastic. So Marquise, what business is it that you're going to be highlighting here for us tonight?
Okay, I am going to highlight a business that's on the rise right now. This business is Miss Dairy Pickles. Paul, do you eat pickles? Are you a pickle eater?
I do like a good pickle.
You say you do like or you don't like?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Miss Dairy Pickles. So I want to give you the origin story, and the reason I want to give you the origin story is because I feel like with all the businesses I'm sure I'm giving the origin story because I feel like the origin story captures the essence of the business itself. The origin story captures the essence of this business. And so I started the origin story, so I'm going to travel backwards first, and then I'm kind of working my way up. So it really started off with her, Miss Dairy. It kind of gave it away. I was kind of trying to build some suspense. Miss Dairy Pickles gave it all away, but it started off with her and her friends going to this little convenience store and getting pickles, flavor pickles, just eating flavor pickles. Then that store closed and they were looking for that same brand of flavor pickles, but they could not find it. So Dairy, the friend in the group, was like, you know what? I'm going to figure out how to make us some flavor pickles, So then she took the challenge on trying to make the flavor pickles. So then she went through this experimenting process, right? So she went to the lab. She went experimented, started trying to make all these different flavors. Trying to perfect the flavor pickle. And she ate so many pickles that she felt sick. And by that point, she didn't want to eat any more pickles, but she felt the flavor, so to speak. So she got rid of most of all her jars or all her pickles. And as she got rid of all her jars for most of her pickles, she said, hey, I can't just get some feedback. Short version is everyone went crazy. People were sharing on Facebook, and it was like almost overnight. She had all these requests of making pickles, and she's like, I'm just trying it out. I just had a lot of jars because I was literally trying to perfect making the pickle that I was craving. So then people were coming up to her, like her old mentor came up to her and asked her, hey, can you have you tried making a peppermint flavored pickle? She's like, peppermint? She's like, I just tried sweet hot garlic. Yeah, she started with two flavors. I want to mention that. Sweet hot and sweet hot garlic, which is those are traditional flavored pickles. So have you tried peppermint? She said, okay, I'll try. And she made peppermint, perfected that, and that was off to the races as well. She has now, her flavor inventory has expanded. When I say expanded, I wrote down some stuff so I make sure I'm on point here. She obviously has standard, kosher. She has these weird flavors that people request, like peppermint, lemonade flavors. So she has lemonade, then peach lemonade. She has Skittle flavors, the green. The Skittle flavors like watermelon Jolly Rancher, the most of Jolly Rancher flavors. She has alcoholic flavors for adults. So what's called strawberry Hennessy and Crown Apple. So she has these flavors as well. Now I'm just giving you trying to show you the growth that happened because this happened in 2016. I didn't mention that. Starting in 2016. Now she's in stores. Now she's getting into stores. She still delivered because that's how she first started off, delivering to people. But now she's in the Galleria. She's now in the Mini Mart and in the northern part of the city, the Mini Mart, JJ's Market. So what I would like to say is that let me double check. Okay. Yeah, so she is now. I always want to emphasize she's now transitioning from delivering pickles to now like having people pick up pickles from different locations. So it just shows like the growth of this business. Right now during COVID, she's having no contact delivery, so she still delivers. She has no contact deliveries. If you guys would like to place an order for pickles, you guys will go through her website and place an order for pickles. The pickle I suggest is sweet, mild garlic. I will say sweet high garlic, but some people say it's too high. So I suggest sweet mild garlic because that's like the initial flavor that she created, you know. So I would like to just showcase this business, and I will put the link in the chat so you guys can see my page of her business on my directory.
Yeah, that's it. Marquise, that's awesome. And you know, like we talked last time, you know, and you continue to highlight the origin stories of these businesses, because the origin story is really the heart and soul of why this business exists.
Right.
And I got to tell you, I think I'm gonna have to order those peppermint pickles. That I'm really intrigued about what that tastes like. I think that's be a good selection.
Yes. I think what's the one that that she made that I liked. It was the one she made. I think it was strawberry lemonade. I'm like, what? Like how are you gonna make strawberry lemonade taste like a pick and like and still have this? I'm like, wow, you know. I mean, once you eat it, it's like very, you know, interesting to see how like these flavors work together. But yeah, I don't want to talk too much, but that's the business I want to highlight today.
That's cool, Marquise. Thank you so much. And for everybody, we just saw it there on the screen, directblack.com, and we've got Miss Ari's Pickles, and so go ahead and check out their website. You can check it out through Marquise's website there. Marquise, thank you so much for coming on again. I think we're going to see each other again at the next time that we go live on Saturday, right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Correct. Excellent. Thanks, Marquise. Great to see you. Have a wonderful evening.
You as well. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. All right. So now we're going to get to our live stream with our Spring Awakening cast. So we got two different segments that we're going to be doing tonight. One is going to have some of our ensemble members as well as some of the primary characters, and then in the second half we're going to talk to the actors who played the primary roles in Spring Awakening, as well as the two actors that played all of the adults in the story. So let's go ahead and find out who's with us here tonight. First up, we have Sam.
Hi.
Hey there, Sam. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for being here tonight. We're looking forward to talking with you about your experience in Spring Awakening. Of course. So next up, we have Bella.
Hi.
Hey, Bella. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you very much for asking. So I know that you've got a lot of stories that came from Spring Awakening.
I have so many.
And we are definitely looking forward to hearing those stories here tonight. Thanks so much for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Next up, we have Olivia.
Hello.
Hello. How you doing, Olivia?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic. Olivia played Martha in the show. One of the more difficult characters to play based on her story and her background. So Olivia, we're excited to hear kind of your process that you took in order to tell Martha's story.
I'm excited to tell you guys.
Yeah. Next up, we have Thomas.
Hello.
Hey, Thomas, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. How about you, Paul?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. So, Thomas, you played Ernst, and Ernst as well as Hanshin are two characters that really took GCPA to the next level in regards to the storytelling that we have on stage in regards to the celebration of the LGBTQ community. And so we're excited to hear your perspective on telling their story tonight. So thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And then last here on the first segment of our feed tonight, we have Jack.
Hello. How are you?
I'm great, Jack. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty swell. Pretty swell.
Excellent. So Jack played Hanshin, the other half of the LGBTQ story in Spring Awakening, and it looks like you've got your finale T-shirt on.
I
today.
do. I just popped this bad boy on just for you.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad you did. So in addition to hearing about Hanshin and Ernst and telling their story, we're also going to talk about that T-shirt and the impact that had in the story as well. So thanks so much for being here.
No problem.
All right. So Stephanie, let's go ahead and bring everybody up. All right. So as we start off our conversation here tonight, it's important to mention that Spring Awakening really dealt with so many issues in the story, and in order to really help the audience process them, we had talkbacks at the end of each production, where the cast and while we kind of assigned different cast members to each show, everybody, you all wanted to be a part of every one of them, which was really exciting. So Sam and Bella, let's start with you. If you would tell us a little bit about what it was like for you as an actor to be able to interact with the audience in that way after you tell such an impactful story like Spring Awakening.
I'll take this one. So I always look forward to talkbacks. It was funny. If I was seeing a show and they were offering talkbacks, I'd always stay after, partially just to the annoyance of my parents, but also because I want to hear the actors' experience with working with the storytelling, because I love stories, but I also love hearing the story behind the story. Mm-hmm. So when I heard that Spring Awakening was doing talkbacks, I was like, yes, it's my time to shine. I finally can have this moment for me. And so the thing is, Spring Awakening has so many modern day issues that they cast in a it was back then light, but it's still very prevalent today. And that's part of the reason why they incorporated them. So I think it was just kind of to also, as a cast, take it a step further. Like, these are still applicable to teens now. So put it the arts are supposed to move you. So art is supposed to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comforted. That's essentially what the talkback was to do, is to enforce that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bella, for that perspective. And Sam, Bella is really seeks out those opportunities for the talkbacks. What was it like for you to be a part of those talkback sessions with the audience?
Yeah, it was one of my favorite parts of doing the show during the weekend, and sometimes we would even get to hear some stories from the audience. Sometimes that was honestly my favorite part, probably, is when we would be doing these talkbacks and an audience member would point out whether it be a certain song or a certain character, and they would say a part of their story, and it's really amazing, and it's a wonderful thing, to even, whether we know it already, but still to even witness it, to see, it can apply to anybody. And we can, especially as adolescents ourselves, playing people that are essentially our age, it can be a lot more personal, and seeing that the audience themselves can also relate, and being able to answer questions and bond with the audience even more, especially after such an almost pretty intense show. It's really amazing. It really is. I wanted to stay there every single time, just for that, being able to both share even more stories and just, I guess, get to know everyone even more in our own way.
Yeah. Yeah, so Sam, you bring up, the fact that many of our audience members shared some of their stories with us. So when you think about some of those topics that came up in those talkbacks, what were some of the things that stuck with you most, whether it be questions that were asked or stories that were shared? What were some of those things that stuck with you all the most?
Yeah, I think it's not a specific story, but I do remember there was one person who actually I know, and she's one of my friends, and she actually went up to me after the show, and she let me know a few things that she had been going through, both currently, like during the show, but also she had been dealing with beforehand. And the one big thing, especially with that Moritz deals with, especially when it comes to depression and everything like that, and anxiety, and struggling to find people that you can relate to and people you can talk to. And I think that story, because I knew the person I was talking to, but also then just a person being able to come and see that show and seeing, hey, I'm not alone in this. There are still other people that go through all of this. Whether it's a show or not, it is still, like Bella said, very real and still very modern and still very current. And I think that moment definitely stuck with me, and it was opening that night when that happened. So being able to do the show, for the rest of the run, knowing, having that in mind, and like just knowing that we are doing that for other people, and the show is even doing it for us as well. I think that's definitely something that stuck with me.
Yeah, Sam, thanks for sharing that. And what you share there in regards to your friend who came to you and talked to you about some of the things that they had been going through. I know that Sean, who played Moritz, there were many audience members, peers, who reached out to him afterwards and talked about things that had been going on in their life, similar to your friend. And just thanking him for telling that story and bringing, in some cases, comfort, in some cases, understanding. That everybody's journey was a little bit different, but the impact that it had was so great. So Bella, I know that you were a part of many of the things that came out. As a matter of fact, there was one question that came up multiple times, that by the third, fourth, fifth show, everybody just kind of went, Bella, go ahead, you're on. It helps if I know which side I'm supposed to look at. She's that way. So tell us a little bit about some of those questions that everyone always wanted to push to you, because you were really almost prepared for the question even the first time that they came up.
Yeah. If you saw the show or was in talkbacks, I probably said something, just a heads up. So you're probably like, oh, that's where she's from. So basically, honestly, so all of them just had such different, like every night was a new topic, essentially. Like I remember my first big one, it was, we opened on a Thursday, correct?
Uh-huh.
Yes. So it was the Friday night performance, and I talked about how we're the I generation, and so information is just at our fingertips, and that's especially like with our generation now as well. And I remember even bringing up the Michael Brown shooting and how my parents wanted to kind of shelter me from that because I was really young, but I was like, fine, I'm gonna look it up. Like it's just how at the age of technology, ignorance is just not acceptable. And so I was talking about how, because of the fact that we've had, my generation, Gen Z, has had just information constantly everywhere, we were getting ourselves at times into situations or knowledgeable sources that maybe we should not have. I'm talking primarily the infamous page in Touch Me that my mom saw, that raised hell in the control booth, apparently. Paul knows, and Tom, they all know exactly what I'm talking about. She's probably downstairs like, oh my God. But I also remember the next morning in the matinee, I think it was Samantha's, it was one of your aunts. I was talking about how we, our generation, we need to start voting because we know everything. We have so much knowledge. And so how I was saying how I think the government will start to look a lot different when our voices will be able to be heard in politics. And I remember getting applause for that one. It stuck with me. I was like, oh, it caused something. But yeah, I mean, I will be 18 by the time of this upcoming election. So registering to vote for that was a surreal feeling. And I mean, it's part of our duty, and it's part of us being able to learn and acknowledge our past mistakes, but also working towards a better future. And I think that utmost is part of the message of Spring Awakening, is working towards progressive ideals, but also towards a more cohesive future.
Yeah. And by the way, Jessica, thank you for giving the production team a memory that we will never forget. We love you, Jessica. We really do. So as we're talking about some of the stories that came from those talkbacks, Jack and Thomas, there was one story in particular that came from those talkbacks that had very specifically to do with the Hanschen and Ernst storyline. So would you mind sharing that story with us right now?
I'll chime in on that one.
Yeah.
Well, we were just talking about how a lot of times in musical theater, gay relationships have been stereotyped and put out as just non-normalized. And that it's our job as storytellers to take audiences that haven't come in contact with certain groups and just give them the ability to understand that group a little bit more, just from simple exposure. Because the easiest way to become an ally to a group is to just know people from that group and have exposure to that group. And she was really happy with the way that our production told Hanschen and Ernst's story, very unstereotypical, using the same lighting that we used for Melchior and Wendla's love song during our love song, because it's the same love. Love is love, you know? And that's something that, I mean, Thomas, do you want to chime in on this? That I feel like we've talked a lot about in the rehearsal room too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for sure. I remember at callbacks, I knew a little bit about the show. I'd listened to the soundtrack a lot, and I had watched a few clips from it, stuff like that. I hadn't watched a full bootleg because, you know, that's illegal. But I had watched some stuff, and I'd heard the soundtrack, and the Word of Your Body reprise. I listened to it, and I was like, oh, this is so cute. Like, love that. And Paul, I remember saying at callbacks when we were all getting ready to read for Hanschen and Ernst, he said, you know, usually this is done in a very comedic way, and that's not the way that I want to do it. That's not the way that I see it. I see it as a love story that's very serious and very real and very much equivalent to that of Melchior and Wendla. And to me, that was the first time that I'd ever really thought of it in a comedic way. And I went back home on my drive home. I listened to it again, and it was interesting just hearing it with that different perspective, because I'd never really had it that way before. Because when you listen to the words, you hear what they're saying and what they're singing about. To me, it's just so normal. And so the words they're saying are so beautiful and mean so much. But then when you take it and you put this comedic spin on it, it completely changes all of it. And for me, I never wanted to see it that way. And I think for me, it was almost kind of nice coming into the show, not really ever seeing it that way. After the show was over, I went back and I watched a bootleg. But I saw it the comedic way, and I was just like so confused by it, because, you know, we all, as people, I think especially as artists, like Jack was saying, we have a duty to tell stories, and we have a duty to do it in a way that touches people and makes them feel seen. And I feel like the way that our production chose to tell that story told the LGBTQ community that, you know, you're seen, you are, you're looked at in a way that is equal with everyone else, and you aren't We weren't this thing that we push over to the side and make a comedic thing or a joke, because it's not a joke. It's a community that needs support, needs love, just like any minority community. And I think being able to look at it and tell the story in a way that communicated that and was done effectively on top of that, and to hear other people talk about it in a way like that woman did at the Talkback was something that was really inspiring for me, and really just made me feel like, wow, what we're doing, something that I'd never even thought of, just based off of everything that I had known about the show up until that point. It was nice to see that somebody felt it and someone felt like that story included them and made them feel a part of something.
Yeah, I very vividly, and you even said it, I very vividly remember her words. I didn't feel like I would be able to see myself when I saw this show, but I am seen, and that was really impactful to hear that. So as we talk about, you know, what that story was and the impact of that story, what was it like for you to go about telling that story? Because that's a journey that is just, Jack, as you had mentioned, and we talked about in rehearsal, it's just as deep as the relationship and the love that Melchior and Vendela have for one another. So what was that process like for you as you were telling their story? Go ahead, Jack.
Just to plug GCPA for a second and their storytelling skills. No, I mean, it's interesting because every single part of this show had the same amount of time spent on it. Had the same amount of time put into it and into telling that story. And GCPA is not about the producers' end of like trying to make things a little heightened just to get an audience's you know, we understand silence from an audience is important, and that sometimes we don't need to make everything a joke. We can take the writing as it is in its truest form and use that because it has gravity. We don't need to give it gravity if it already does. And that scene between Hanschen and Ernst, just like Thomas was saying, is when you read it, is a beautiful love story about how Hanschen is actually quite scared to talk to Ernst and isn't cocky at all. Because coming into the situation, he's afraid that if he professes his love, maybe Ernst won't return it, and Ernst will go back and tell the people of the town. And especially during the time this took place, that was a fear. But even now, you can relate to it today, and that fear that people from the LGBT community face when trying to just live normal relationships in public, especially with the current climate we live in. So during the rehearsal processes, we did a really good job of digging into their story and just the truest love of the relationship, and kind of in a way giving the audience exposure to that group without doing anything more than that. So yeah.
How about you, Thomas?
I think for me, it was really interesting telling this story just because I think what I realized about Ernst especially is we all have things that we don't like about ourselves necessarily, or that we wish we could improve about ourselves, or just, I don't want to say completely change, but, you know, there's things we want to work on in ourselves. There's things that we wish could be a little bit different. And I think what's so beautiful about Ernst's story is that throughout the show, you sort of see him as somebody who doesn't do a ton. He's just kind of there for a lot of it, and he's kind of very quiet, very reserved. And because of Hanschen, he's able to embrace a part of himself that he didn't want to look at and he didn't want to think about. And I think that that's something that anyone can relate to. It doesn't necessarily have to be relating to their sexual orientation or anything else. We all have things deep inside of ourselves that we don't necessarily love, but it's through acknowledging them and through just owning it, because, you know, we all are who we are at the end of the day. And there's things that we can work on, but there's a lot of things. Yes, be you. I think that that's what's so so beautiful about this story is just that, you know, it doesn't need to be, oh, I see exactly who I am in this one person. It can be something as little as, wow, like I'm struggling with this and I want to look at it and I want to dig deep into it and I want to be able to tackle it and look at it and help improve myself or do anything. And that was something I think throughout the process that I really looked at within myself, because it's hard to, especially as a member of the LGBT community, to, you know, own a part of yourself and just really like love who you are and accept it and look into yourself and sorry, I'm getting choked up. Just to like love yourself. And I think it's important that stories like this continue to get told because, you know, the more that you see people owning who they are, I think the more that people in just everyday life are going to do it. I hope all of that made sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. And what I'm hearing both of you talk about is the importance of representation. And how representation matters, and I can't help but think, you know, beyond just Hanchen and Ernst's story, but a video that has been viral on the internet right now about the little girl who's watching Hamilton, and she looks at Philippa Sue and says, "That's me," and you know, and the importance of that representation, seeing ourselves in stories and being able to have those relatable moments. It ultimately builds confidence and helps us to struggle. Thomas, like you mentioned, there are things about ourselves individually that, you know, we wish we could change or that we're not particularly proud of or fond of. But recognizing it, owning it, accepting it, and ultimately loving it, and loving ourselves for who we are. So Olivia, thinking about, you know, loving ourselves for who we are, you played Martha, and Martha has, she's got a pretty horrific past, and really difficult experiences, and they all have come at the hands of her father. So what was the process like for you to tell the story of Martha, who's been sexually and physically abused by her father?
So first of all, when I got the call that I was going to be playing Martha, I was like really excited because, you know, I loved the show and, you know, the story and everything it represented and things like that. But I was also like really nervous because it became aware to me that I was telling a story that could be someone's current situation. It's still, even though it's a story that's in the past, it's still really it applies to today. So I didn't want to, you know, because I've never been through something like that, I wanted to respect those that have and not make it like too dramatic and like, you know, edgy and stuff. Like I wanted it to be true to what is happening. And I just wanted to respect everyone that went through that and made sure I was telling the right story. And, you know, I I kind of researched, watched some like documentaries, like things like that before we started rehearsal, which is like really hard to watch, but I knew I needed to just to like kind of understand what that point of view is like. And I like kind of grew with Martha's character. I knew that I wasn't that person, obviously, because that's a very traumatic experience. And I had to set apart myself from my character. But it was kind of interesting, like, you know, everyday things that would happen to me. I'd be like, how would Martha react to that? Like, how is that different from, you know, when a traumatic experience happens? And we talked about this on the first day with Kristen, our trauma therapist. Like, your brain is completely like wired to think about your past trauma, you know, like, I don't know. I just really grew with her. And I think it made me not only a better actor, but a better person, because I was putting myself, the whole practice of empathy and putting myself into someone else's shoes that I've never experienced before. And I was kind of sad, like the last night, like I was like, oh, I'm saying goodbye to Martha, like the girl I've had for like the past 3 months or so, you know. But yeah, I kind of miss her, I'm not gonna lie.
You know, Olivia, it's interesting to hear you say that. You know, you miss this character that has such a difficult history, and
Yeah.
it is so emotionally draining to portray on stage. And I've played characters in my career that were very opposite of who I am, who have had very rough histories. And I found the same thing, and it's because of the care that we come to find for that character, and the care that we want to see them have, and so that becomes difficult to say goodbye to sometimes. And but you also mentioned something as you were talking there about making sure that you were safe during the process, and making sure that Martha's traumas stayed separate from Olivia and who you are as an individual. And you mentioned Kristen, who is our trauma therapist that we brought in for that process. Can you talk a little bit about some of what Kristen was talking about in that first meeting that really helped you to make sure that Martha stayed with Martha so that Olivia could be Olivia?
Yeah, so just like I said before, we talked about, you know, how trauma works in the, yes, we do love Kristen. Snaps for her. But we talked about how trauma really affects the brain, and that was kind of interesting because, you know, just how everyday life, like how different people view things. And then she also showed us a couple exercises just to get grounded in your body and not your character, you know. That also really helped me before we went on stage. And also just to wind down, because the show like had very drastic emotions. Like 1 minute you're angry and teen angst, and then the next moment you're crying, you know, it's kind of all over the place. And we just did a lot of like grounding, breathing exercises, things like that. And also just being around the cast, and we were all really close. That also helped, like just seeing everyone's faces after I sang like Dark I Know Well and thing, you know. It reminded me of my story and like all the people and that I was working with. So, and I was having so much fun too. So it was kind of like, it wasn't hard for me to separate me from Martha in a way.
Yeah.
Oh.
And there, that I believe that was before our final performance. Our final added performance, mind you, because we had sold out the weekend and we added a 6th show. And Olivia, you mentioned The Dark I Know Well, and that was for me in my artistic journey with this story. That was one of the kind of pivotal moments for me in order to find visually what you and Olivia were singing about as Martha and Ilsa, and to find ultimately determining that it was going to be the shadows, like the heads of the fathers, the men who have abused you, and really visibly displaying the emotion that you're speaking about in that song in regards to feeling like you're in the shadow, the dark that you know, the dark that you know so well. So everyone, let's talk about the song of Purple Summer. So each one of you in the cast, with the exception of Melchior, and we're going to hear from Nathan a little bit later, each one of you is wearing a different T-shirt. So Bella, if you would, can you talk to us about the overall concept of those T-shirts? And then Bella, after you share, will everyone talk about the T-shirt that you wore and the importance that it had for you as a character, as well as if you as a person had drawn any emotional ties to those T-shirts as well. So Bella, tell us about that concept. We can't.
Yeah. So
There
basically,
we go.
in
Can you start
productions
again?
of Spring Awakening,
We didn't hear you like the
you
first
can't
half
hear
of
me.
your sentence.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So basically in some productions of Spring Awakening, the ending song, Song of Purple Summer, it's an epilogue. So basically it isn't necessarily tied to the story. It's just sort of a final closer. And so it's up for interpretation of the directing team. So in some cases, the cast comes out in their period costumes, but other times they come out in modern day clothes to show that these are actual teenagers experiencing these stories, something that we have rehashed multiple times in this live stream. So basically for us, Paul had the brilliant idea of us all wearing t-shirts that represented the struggles that our students, characters, I'm really sorry, that our characters had dealt with. So for example, Thomas's and Jack's, they were both equipped to LGBTQ rights. So Thomas's was the Lin-Manuel Miranda Tony acceptance sonnet, love is love is love is love. And Jack, he's wearing his. And so both Olivia's, theirs was for the Me Too movement because both of their characters are victims of sexual abuse. And so primarily for the ensemble characters, we had quotes and then an underline underneath it just to signify any other issues that was not stated, but also as a way that there are so many other issues that our generation has to deal with. But also we were in more humble clothing. Like we all were wearing jeans. Some of us were in tennis shoes. I remember I was walking like the mom jean and combat look. That was definitely of the 2019 era, pre-alt girl. And so it all, Thomas gets it. But basically like it all just shows is that the problems, they affect also the modern world and that we are the voices of those and like the headlines of those issues and debates.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be debates, but they are.
Preach. So tell us, everyone, about when you walked out on stage with those t-shirts on as part of the epilogue. What did that feel like for you? What was the impact of that moment for each of you? Go ahead, Jack.
Well, it kind of ties into the fact of how we were kids representing kids. You know, every other time I've seen the show done, it's with adults representing kids, which it's usually is. It's usually adults writing for children. But in this case, we were not just representing the actual age of these kids, but the generation of new ideas that come with the youth. And overall acceptance that comes with being put in new perspectives. And I think that when I walked out with my shirt, Believe in Yourself, which I think is all about knowing your own self-worth and not letting other people's opinions have an effect on how you feel about the way you are. It was empowering, and it really felt like for a moment people were taking a look at the younger generation and the mindset that they know they have not lived a life as long as adults, but they have a entirely different perspective on the time they have been alive than the people who have been alive longer. So that's kind of what was running through my mind as I stepped out on stage, trying not to cry.
Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also adding on to that, there was one part that we did during Purple Summer, in addition to the shirts, is we started on that big stage in the back and we walked down almost into the audience. And I think that even just something as simple as that, made it even more powerful. Starting with all of us in these modern clothes, as we've mentioned, being, hey, we're still kids and playing kids, and we're still teenagers. There's all of these issues are still happening, but also it made it so much more personal. And being able to be in that black box, especially when that was happening, and being able to see everyone's faces, not only during the whole show, but I mean, even during Purple Summer, it was, you know, sometimes you would see some people crying, which I don't blame them because I wanted to cry too sometimes. But you would sometimes see people just almost mesmerized by what was happening. And I think that added to it so much more. It's, you know, black boxes are so personal with the audience, and, you know, it makes, I mean, it does, it makes you feel like you're part of the show and you're part of the cast. And I think that being able, you know, to walk out in those shirts, and we, you know, with, you know, wearing these statements and wearing, you know, these, I don't know, yeah, statements, wearing them and walking out just as us. You know, we weren't really walking out as our characters anymore. You know, we were walking out as us, as Samantha, as Olivia, as Jack, as everybody. And I think that the you know, it was, you know, shout out to GCPA. I think they handled it perfectly. You know, I think the way that it was set up, the lighting, it stayed pretty simple throughout the entire thing as well, so that way the audience could stay focused on what we were saying. And I think it made me want to cry. It was both mesmerizing for the audience and for us. You know, it's easily one of my favorite numbers of the show for so many reasons. Yeah.
So Sam, something that you shared here made me think of something that people who saw the show probably didn't think about, and now as they're going through their head, they're probably going to start putting little pieces together. So one of the things that we did with that platform was that the platform represented the adult world, and the deck of the theater was the kids' world. And in the end of the story, having everyone start on the platform and moving down into the space was really representative of something that Bella, you had mentioned earlier about the youth. Your voices are the future. And your voice matters when it comes to voting. And your voice matters when it comes to working towards equality and taking up the causes and the movements that are so important to you, and saying it's our time now, and the impact of what that was. And Sam, I think you very eloquently shared, you know, and you sparked that idea for me to help continue to put those pieces together for those who saw the show. Did others want to share about their perspective about Purple Summer? Thomas. And then we'll go to you, Olivia.
So I think it's always kind of, at least for me, kind of scary sometimes to think about, like, you know, making a statement or really speaking your beliefs and stuff, just because of, you know, sometimes there's the fear of what other people are going to say. And I think what was so wonderful about having us all wear those shirts at the end that were saying different things in support of different communities and different groups was that, you know, everyone in that audience had just sat through the exact same show. They'd just seen the same show, and they'd all just heard the same messages. And I feel like at the very end, it was one of those things where it was so cool to sort of see everyone's like mind sort of connecting the dots with the different stories and seeing the different characters with their different shirts on that were so representative of the story that was being told. And like we've said, it was in a completely different time from where we're at right now. But being able to show those modern day connections that so vividly relate to those issues back then was something that was so cool to be a part of. And it was really fun being like up close and personal with the people in the front row, really like squelching our faces off and having them just look around and be like, whoa. And of course, like the music's incredible. The lyrics are absolutely beautiful. But just being able to see everyone sort of like thinking through it was so awesome. So yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. And yeah, it was really impactful to when you're so close to the audience and seeing them see everything and take all of that in and take that moment in. It becomes that's one of the reasons why we do live theater, right? That shared moment, particularly in a black box setting like that. Olivia.
Well, just to add on to what Samantha said, when she said, like, when we went out in our t-shirts, it was us. Like, it wasn't our characters. Like, it just made me think, like, I was putting that shirt on, like, speaking, like, for the Marthas out there that, like, I wanted to help and, you know, and it just, I don't know. That was just something I wanted to share because it's just really interesting because it's empowering putting on something like that and speaking for other people that might be too afraid to speak out. And
yeah,
that's the beauty
Olivia,
of the show.
That's so important to point out. And particularly where we are right now in July of 2020 and the importance that allyship means to our community and standing up and speaking out for those who maybe are afraid to speak out for themselves or whose voice hasn't been heard. And Olivia, that's just so beautifully spoken in what that power is in standing up and say, I stand with you and I'm going to work together with you. It has been an absolute pleasure getting to talk with you all here tonight. Before we round out our first segment here, I want to go round robin because at every one of our GCPA Live events, we give you an opportunity to talk about why is it that young artists should take classes and audition for shows at GCPA. So we'll start with Bella. We'll go around the horn. And then we'll say goodbye for now.
Yeah, so I joined GCPA when I was in 7th grade. I was in Thoroughly Modern Millie, and I was hooked from the second that I stepped foot into Reber Elementary School for rehearsals. I absolutely loved the environment. It is extremely supportive. I think so. St. Louis has a massive fine arts community. I feel like people can kind of understand that. And so but it's kind of rare to find a company that will actually support its students, will support their own decisions. And so, especially in terms of Spring Awakening, I felt so comfortable in that rehearsal room. I felt like people had my back, not only the creative team, but also the students and the cast members. You guys know how to pick a wonderful cast of supportive people. And also, I was a student as well. I took dance classes for 2 years, and it's just the most supportive environment. Also something that's kind of hard to come by because the dance world can be extremely toxic. So I was really fortunate to be able to have really kind teachers, and I was able to really just embrace my own personal growth while also recognizing the fact that I had growth, which is something that you can't always find in some certain settings. So please do GCPA shows and classes.
Thank you, Bella. Thomas.
So I think what's awesome about GCPA is that you get a lot of opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily get at other companies or other places in the St. Louis theater community. I mean, Spring Awakening, for example, is an awesome example. I remember when they announced that they were doing a Spring Awakening at Raise the Curtain, someone was like, oh, like, I wonder what it's going to be. And everyone was like, oh, I have no idea. And I was like, guys, well, joke's on you because I already called it. It's going to be Spring Awakening. I saw the Instagram teaser and I just know that it's going to be Spring Awakening. And I was right, but I was shocked that I was right. I was like, you are kidding me. Yes, Raise the Curtain. Go to Raise the Curtain. Everyone get your tickets. And I was like, what? How are they going to do that? And then I went home and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, I wonder how it's going to happen. And just the atmosphere, the way that the story was approached was in a way that was so well thought out and so perfectly executed. It was meant to be a process where everyone was able to learn and grow. It wasn't meant to be, oh, let's put on the perfect show. Let's get all the awards. Let's do everything. It was about the people in the cast. It was about the story. It was about giving people in the audience something that they could connect with and something that they could take home with them and look back on for years to come. And I think what GCPA does that a lot of other companies don't do is that is at the forefront of every single show. It's about the actors. It's about the audience. It's about the story. It's not about anything else. And I think that when you're trying to learn and grow as a performer and a person, I think that's what you need to put first. It needs to be about the story, and it needs to be about what you're trying to communicate to others. And I really realized that when I first came to GCPA, and I took that with me in every show that I did with GCPA and outside of GCPA. After my first show with them. And I think I sort of speak for everyone when I say that my perspective on musical theater and just theater in general sort of changed after my first show with GCPA. And I really started looking at everything as a whole rather than just where I fit in the puzzle. It became about the entire process, the entire show, and everyone involved. Paul?
Hi guys,
I'll
I don't know where Paul is. Not fully prepared to be on screen, but we're gonna move on. Olivia, what do you have to share about the GCPA?
So I started GCPA when I was like 6th grade, and I just have to say I've learned so much, like as an actor, as a person, and all of like my best friends are there, and it's just the environment that it is. Like I've been to a couple different companies, and not to bash on any of them, but you know, when you're walking in a theater company, it's always about, oh, I'm competing against you for this part, and you know, things like that. But I just never feel like that at GCPA, because everyone's just happy for each other and supporting each other. It's not about like, you know, everyone's eager to get roles and things like that, but it's not like, you get what I'm saying? It's not too like competitive to where it's like not enjoyable. And like just the fact that there was a trauma therapist on set with us just goes to show that GCPA really cares about their actors and, you know, their personal lives as well. And I think that really like goes to show that GCPA is a great company and they care. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we absolutely think that. I like to think that you guys are competitive, that you are doing your best, but always supportive of one another. So we appreciate that. Who wants to go next? Sam.
I think I can speak truthfully for myself and so many other people when I say GCPA is home. I think that, you know, it's so, like everyone has said, it's such a supportive group of people. It's such a supportive place, and it's truly a safe place for so many people, you know, me being one of those people. But also at the same time, it's so professional, and they've somehow found the perfect balance, you know, between personal and professional. And we're treated like professionals, where, you know, even stuff as simple as we're expected to know our lines and to have practiced all of our choreography, you know, when we got home. But also, you know, GCPA isn't afraid to have fun. You know, but also like it's amazing. I can't even put it into words, but even the fact that GCPA is even, you know, doing all these live streams and everything, you know, really shows how much they care. You know, it's during quarantine, you know, they found a way to still connect with everybody and still say, hey, we're still here. We still care for you, and we're still here to support you. We're still here with you. And I think that, you know, that itself show so much of GCPA, that can explain so much of what I mean and how much they care. And like she said, like, it's the whole bringing the trauma therapist in there, so that way they can make sure that we are cared for as actors, instead of, you know, only worrying about, you know, whether the character is actually, you know, well played or not. You know, it's also focusing on our mental health. But it's amazing. You know, I you know, my first show, I think, was Greenwood, and ever since then, yeah, my first show wasn't even like a I guess, I don't want to say a real show, but it was an on stage. We still, thank you, it was a workshop. I couldn't think of the word, but even then, like, we were still working together. You know, it's very collaborative. You never feel like you're being talked down to or talked at. You're really only being talked with. And I think that it's so personal, and they get to know you, and it's professional, and you're getting amazing training, you know, the entire year, the entire rehearsal, the whole show and everything. But also, you know, the people you can go to. You know, you, even after, you know, people graduate, they still come back. And I don't blame them. You know, you can, yeah, like Jack came back a few times, I remember. But, you know, you can come back because you know that they're still going to be there for you. And I think that itself has such a strong message. But yeah, I mean, I really do think I can speak for everybody when I say GCPA. It really is home.
Thanks for that, Sam. And we're also always learning. So I've now learned to be camera ready when I'm backstage. Paul is now back. His computer died. So I'm going to go out and bring him back.
Hey there, gang. Sorry about that.
Hello. It's nice to see you again.
It's nice
Paul.
to be seen. Thanks.
All right. I was just going to say that if you're looking for a place to do theater, whether or not you're just looking for an activity to do, or you're thinking this is where you want to go with your life, one thing that I can promise you coming into this program is that it's not a program for the program, which a lot of times theater companies can be. We need to put on our show. We're not going to give the actors that much say in how the show is put on, because it kind of needs to happen, and that's how we make our revenue, right? Instead, you take a huge risk, which is allowing the actors to have a part of your show, and you have dialogues with those people in your show. And you take a huge risk in allowing actors to make decisions and choices on stage. And it's another part of that professionalism, that in the real world, the reason you're hired is because you're wanted. And you really feel wanted at GCPA. You really feel like they took you for that role specifically because they saw something in you that you could add to that part. Not that you were just a placeholder for this part that needs to be filled, and that's how we put on the show. You will feel like you're in the real deal, and you'll have a good example of what the real deal is like if you are thinking about going into this. Because if you go through any one of GCPA's productions, you'll have a good idea of what it's like to do a professional show in the real world, and from there, you can decide if that's the path you want to go on. But either way, you're definitely going to have fun doing it, and you're going to be a part of this huge family that's already established when you walk in the door.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Thank you, everybody. It's so wonderful to see you all and get to talk about this story. So impactful for all of you. It was impactful for the production team as well. And Spring Awakening will always be a piece of GCPA history because we added a show. It was the first one that we had 5 shows already built into the run, and adding a 6th show was just remarkable. And that just is a testament to you all and your storytelling and the impact that you made on the audience to want to come back and tell their friends and tell people that they needed to see you tell the story. So Bella, Thomas, Olivia, Samantha, Jack, thank you so much for spending some time with us here tonight. We're going to say goodbye to you, but we're going to say hello to part 2 of our supersized edition of Spring Awakening. So go ahead and wave goodbye to everybody. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring out the next set of performers from Spring Awakening to talk about their perspective about the show. So first up, let's bring out Hope.
Hey, Paul.
Hey there, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am well. Did you get comfortable backstage for the last hour?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been sitting here in my chair, in my room. Yeah, it's great.
It's like you're in My Fair Lady. You're like in the ensemble of My Fair Lady.
That's a good one, Paul. No, it's been really nice. It's been really nice hearing everybody talk about the show again. So yeah.
Yeah, and I look forward to speaking with you about the show again too.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Me too. All right, so let's find out who else is with us here. We have Zion with us here tonight.
Howdy, howdy.
Zion, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Paul. How are you?
I am well. I see that you and Jack had the same idea wearing the shirt that you wore.
Yeah, you called it. Yeah, I'm wearing the shirt.
Excellent. So Zion, thank you so much for spending some time, playing all of the adult male characters in the story was quite a track, and we're excited to talk to you about what that process was like for you.
Awesome, I'm excited too.
Yeah, excellent. So I know that we may have because we have a little shift in the background because StreamYard only allows so many participants in the stream. We're waiting on Marissa and on Nathan. Marissa's here. All right.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's so great to see you.
So good to see you too.
So I've got to quickly ask you. Right after Spring Awakening closed, your family moved to LA. So how is it out on the West Coast?
It's actually, if I have to quarantine anywhere, LA is pretty good. I've gotten to go to the beach and I've gotten tan, so it's not too bad. But I miss St. Louis a lot and the people in St. Louis for sure.
Yeah, well, we miss you too, but we know that there are new chapters in your lives, and so we're excited that you were able to spend some time with us here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And last but certainly not least, we have Nathan.
Hello.
Nathan, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It looks like you're rocking a really great COVID hairstyle right now.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So we're excited to talk tonight about what it was like, particularly for you playing the role of Melchior, who carries such a large burden in regards to the impact that he has on so many of the characters in the story, and so we're excited to get your perspective and hear about what that storytelling was like for you.
Yeah.
All right, so Stephanie, let's go ahead and bring everybody out. All right. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with Hope and Zion. So you played all of the adult characters respectively. So Hope, all of the adult women, Zion, all the adult men. And that made for a really challenging track. So talk to us about what your process was like for keeping those transitions between characters so seamless. Go ahead, Hope. Or Zion. You're both going to speak, so
I'll take it. That was the first time I had ever played that many characters in like such a short time frame, like between scenes. And I guess you have to find very distinct, mannerisms, specifically for me at least, to really separate these characters from one another, since I was playing all of them, so I could it was very easy for them to all fall under the same category of or mannerisms or characteristics that they might have. So having to find those distinct differences between them was something that I found very important and helpful in separating these characters, because circumstance alone wouldn't do it. So that's what I worked on, you know, finding those different, you know, little idiosyncrasies that they each had, and trying to really separate those characters from one another. Because some of them were good, and or not, I won't say good, but some of them were like more compassionate than others, and you know, some of them were not as compassionate, but you know, so especially those characters who, you know, were on a similar side of, you know, the nice spectrum. Finding those differences for them specifically was the way I went.
Yeah, and Zion, it was so much fun for me to watch you work, because what you talk about in regards to that physicality, both you and Hope, I could see you both working around finding those idiosyncrasies and what are those little nuances, and that is, and those who know me, we've worked together. You know that physical acting is something that is very important to me because we tell so much of a story through our body, and to see the process that you both were taking, and particularly you, Zion, in finding little moments, and we'll talk a little bit later about when you were Melchior's father. Excuse me, not Melchior's father, Moritz's father.
Yeah.
And what you found with your hand.
Yes.
And just the little things that you found that made such a huge impact in the story. I'm still in awe of that work. You really did remarkable things there.
Thank you.
Hope, how about you with all of the female characters, adult female characters? Excuse me.
Yeah. So that was the first time, this role that I had was the first time I've ever done anything like that. I am usually the like chorus girl, dancing like my head off and singing and things like that. And this was the first role where it was almost strictly acting, except for Song of Purple Summer. Mm-hmm. And in a way, I was so grateful for that, because I was like, I knew that this was going to be a huge turning point for me in my acting, and a huge, just a wonderful opportunity for me to get to explore this part more that I usually don't get to. So playing all of these different characters, they have different views and different personalities. I really wanted to distinguish, because our costumes were not that crazy of a change either. They were very subtle, I kept the same skirt and shirt on most of the time, and it was just like an apron change, or like throw a coat on over. So I really found it so interesting to think about the situations that each adult character go through and the emotions that they all feel, because at some point in the show, they all feel the same emotion, but they would react and feel it differently. So that was one of the most fun things for me to do, is how each character gets angry. Like Venla's mother is the very strict, the not so nice one, and like how she would be angry, and yep, and there she is. how she would hold her tension, or how she would be angry. And Melchior's mother is the more understanding one, the more more understanding of the children. How she would become angry, because there's a point in the show where she becomes angry when we find out that Venla is pregnant, and how she would feel these contradicting feelings. And that was one of my favorite parts. And of course the physical aspect of it too, and how each character stands and walks and uses their facial expressions and things like that. Yeah, it was crazy. It was exhausting, but yeah, it was very rewarding too.
Yeah. So Hope, you started to talk about this a little bit, and I want to dive deeper with both you and Zion. Your all the entirety of all of your characters represent all of the adults, all of the quote unquote authority for those students. So what was it like for you as an actor, a singular person, to carry all of the weight of all of the authority figures that are in these young people's lives?
That's a good question. It was a really cool experience because each character carries a different level of authority, I feel. Especially when it comes to teachers, the teacher parts, and and the way that the characters decide to use their authority too. So it was actually, it was a really nice balance for me with my characters, because I had both very strict and very like overwhelmingly powerful characters, and then I had the characters that were, and then I had like Melchior's mother, who was willing to use her authority to help the children and teach them. So that was it was a huge learning experience for me, because obviously like Zion and I have no idea like what that feels like to have to be in those situations. So yeah, it was very eye-opening, very enlightening to so many different things. So I'm like, oh, that's why my parents tell me that, or like things like that. That's why my mom said that. That's why there's the it was very, yeah, it was very enlightening, very exhausting, like I said before, because we just, along with all this power that we carry in our characters, is we carried the emotions that we made the other characters feel too throughout the entire show. And then those emotions that this adult might have caused these kids, this adult is trying to fix or redirect where they're going, and it's definitely a roller coaster of emotions out there.
Yeah, definitely. Zion, how about you? What did that feel like?
It's stressful, Paul. I'm not gonna lie. It was stressful, and it was hard because Hope and I had to embody a strong, hard, almost unmovable opposition, because for the strongest conflicts have strong opposition on both sides, and if we didn't want to be lackluster on the oppressive side, because that's what the whole show is about, the oppressive power of the authority of adults, or how it can be oppressive, and we embodied all of that. So it was stressful to one, have to switch between different figures, of course, but also be menacing enough for to the audience, to where it's like, wow, these kids really are up against tough powers. Yeah, so it was difficult until we got in the groove of it. Once we got into the motion of things, I feel like once it's easier for a car to start rolling once it's rolling. And so we got into a little groove, but initially I was struggling with that, like the level at which I could instill like fear, I guess, into the to the characters, to the children, and having that translate to the audience. So that was weighing heavy on my conscience while I was acting. I was like, I have to be very strong. You have to be a strong opposition, worthy of these kids like banding together for, because that's how it is in real life sometimes. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something that you said there, Zion, really resonates hard for what the tracks meant for you and for Hope, in that menacing enough, because because the way that we approached your characters in all of the adults in other interpretations of Spring Awakening, the adults are almost two-dimensional caricatures of just harsh, overbearing authority.
Yeah.
And what we tried to find, and what you both did so wonderfully, was that menacing enough that it was real, that it didn't feel for the audience that the power that the adults had was too much, that it became, oh, I don't buy it, right? We need the audience to understand and feel and buy the menace, like you said, that those adult characters have.
I feel like, you know, going off of what you said, I feel like I've seen renditions of the show that do that with other scenes, especially that our LGBTQ inclusive scene.
Mm-hmm.
It's very caricaturish. You know, some people play it, not just, you know, diminishes, you know, the overall experience, or it can, you know, depending on, you know, the message that, you know, whatever production is trying to put on. But I think we came at it from a very more real perspective, and I thought that added, and it was very GCPA of us, very in line with, you know, what you all do here, what we do here, which is great, which I love it. But yeah, going off what you said, it's some renditions did seem very caricaturish from, you know, the authority standpoint, and if you don't buy it, then it doesn't resonate.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to buy it for you to take something away from it. So
yeah, absolutely. And the audience bought it. We all bought where those adults were, and where they were coming from, and the oppression that they held over the students. Speaking of the oppression that the adults held over the students in this, Marissa, you played Wendla. Wendla enters the story in search of truth. And in that photo that Stephanie showed just a few moments ago, where you've got your head on mom's lap, that's a moment where you're fed a lie. So tell us about Wendla's journey and how you approach telling her story in search of truth.
Yeah. So I definitely approached it as, I think, a little different than other people do, because like someone said earlier, this role can be played by someone much older than Wendla actually is, because she's supposed to be about 14 years old. And so I approached it in a way, a lot of people approach it like, okay, like I need to be innocent, like childish or whatever. And I know like myself and how I am viewed by others, and I know that I am already sort of viewed as innocent, and not childish, but childlike. So I viewed it more as entering her head, and like the curiosity that she was feeling, and the sort of open-mindedness that she had, because I think that a lot of the things that happen to Wendla happen for everyone to see, but I think even more of it is in her head, especially during that picture, because like for me, like I was like, okay, like this is probably like such an intense moment for her, like this is it, like this is where she learns everything, this is like what she's been waiting for, and then it doesn't come. So yeah, I definitely approached it as just like the curiosity of it all, and like the getting lost in thought, and like the, oh, but what if, is it this, like is it that, and just like as like a receiver sort of.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, because there are just so many things being thrown at Wendla at once. So I definitely thought a lot about like the things that were going on in her head, as well as the things that she was saying, like in reaction to that.
Yeah, and Marissa, we saw that throughout the course of the story in scenes like the scene where Martha is found to where she shares now that she's being beaten by her father, and that curiosity, the observation that Wendla has, that she's curious about, like she's concerned about her friend, but she's curious about what does it feel like, which then causes her to then go to Melchior and hands him a switch and says, "Hit me." And seeking out experience, and we see you laid such nuanced moments throughout the story that really, as individual moments, the audience may or may not have caught them. But then when they start to see the entirety of the arc that you told in Wendla's story, we see where those dots get connected. And so we just saw, Stephanie just showed a picture of that moment where Wendla gets beaten by Melchior. Talk to us a little bit about that moment, and particularly what happened in the aftermath for Wendla, and how you approached that now new truth and new understanding.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was such an intense scene for me, on stage and when the first time that we blocked it. I remember earlier Olivia said something about being so excited to be a part of this production, but also absolutely terrified. When I heard that GCPA was doing Spring Awakening, I immediately watched a bootleg, and I was watching it and I was like, oh, like, who can I play? Like, I only know the music. And I was watching it with my roommate and I was like, oh, maybe her. And then I watched it more and I was like, oh my God, like, no, like I can never do any of those things. Like, that's terrifying. So yeah, that was a very, very intense scene. So it almost wasn't hard to act during it. But it definitely, I reacted differently than I thought I would, if that makes sense. Because obviously nothing happened to me. I was completely safe the whole time. You made sure of that. Nathan made sure of that. But yeah, I don't know. It was still intense. I remember after the first time we did it, you asked me how I felt, and I was like, I don't know, like vulnerable, like shaky, like an adrenaline rush. So I was really able to apply like the nerves that I had about doing that scene to how Wendla was feeling, and the utter shock of, oh my gosh, like one of my best friends, like this is happening to her, like that's way more intense than I thought it was going to be. And that, like, I was really able to apply that shock that I was feeling. But yeah, afterwards, I think that's like the first moment. Then Wendla's like, wow, like I'm really, like, my mom is really hiding a lot from me. Like, what else is there to learn about? Which I think is why she's like thankful to have Melchior, because Nathan and I were talking about this earlier, that Melchior is such a big part of, for Moritz and for Wendla, like a source of information. So yeah, I think that like after that moment, for me, like seeing his journal too is like, oh my gosh, like I need to know more, and I need to like apologize, of course, because what happened was way worse than that she could have imagined. So yeah, I feel like the curiosity is still like driven there, because she immediately picks up his journal and goes to look for him. So,
yeah. So you mentioned the impact that Melchior has on Wendla and on Moritz. So Nathan, talk to us about playing a character that really carries a lot of weight with him in regards to the impact that he has on so many of his peers.
Like you guys were saying, I think he's kind of like the catalyst of Wendla and Moritz's stories. Eventually they would have learned about, like love and sex and all that stuff, but they would have been in the dark for so long, and I don't think a lot of I don't think they would have been dead, certainly, if it weren't for him kind of pushing that on them. And it's kind of something that he didn't necessarily know that he was doing, or realize that like not everybody is at the same pace he's at with learning about the world and all that stuff. So I don't know. It's kind of
Yeah. So let's talk about this moment that we were just talking about with Marissa in regards to that moment where Wendla comes to Melchior and says, "I've never been beaten," and the heightened tension that ultimately happens with there, because she ultimately says, "I've never felt anything." And so talk to us from your perspective of Melchior's place in that part of the story, and what was it like approaching that moment?
Yeah. So, so earlier in the show, in the scene where it's all the boys in their class, and Melchior starts talking and being like, "Hey, teach." Yeah. But, so he gets hit by the teacher several times. And so whenever we got to this scene with me and Marissa, it was something where I would just go back to that and think, wow, how could she want that? Like, how could anybody ask for that? Because he knows what it's like and all that. And so it would end up being, like Marissa said, I wouldn't really feel like I'd have to do a lot. Once we got into it, I kind of just let everything out, because I feel like it's just something that for somebody who has had to deal with that, you don't want anybody else to, and you certainly wouldn't react very well for somebody asking you to beat them, Yeah.
Yeah. So Nathan and Marissa, let's jump forward in the story. So right the very end of the story itself. So right before Song of Purple Summer, we're at Moritz's grave. We find Wendla's grave. There's a trio where the ghosts of Moritz and Wendla come to Melchior. Talk to us about where that journey goes to this moment where ultimately Wendla and Moritz give Melchior kind of this astral plane support to keep moving forward and telling the story.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they let him keep moving forward because he's about to, try and kill himself to just escape this terrible situation he's in. But then he realizes, it'll be okay. I'll keep them with me and keep going on. And then there's just immediately that transition into Song of Purple Summer, which for me was like, with everybody coming out in their modern day clothes and stuff, and with it plainly on their shirt, these things that we've been talking about for the entire show. It's kind of like him seeing, now that he's kind of pushed away like this darkness that's around him, he kind of gets to see into the future a little bit and say that eventually all these things he's dealing with, they're going to be out in the open and people are going to be talking about them with their kids, and his best friends didn't die from absolutely nothing, and their story's going to keep moving forward.
Yeah. So Marissa.
Yeah, something that I think a lot of people do, like in real life and in stories, is that when someone close to them passes away, you think about like, okay, like how do I move on? And how do I not let them die in vain? And like, what would they say if they were with me now? So I think like those are the thoughts that are going on in Melchior's head. And I think it's a really strong message for any sort of any person that has someone close to them die, because it really makes you think like, how can you take this experience and impact other people with this experience and tell their story and make the world a better place because of past mistakes. So I think that that can be perceived in a lot of different ways, but the way I perceived it is sort of like Melchior's thoughts and what and like the way that it can be applied to real life is like, okay, like if you sit down and you think like, what would this person close to me say to me now to make their memory last? So
Yeah. So let's back up in the story a little bit, and ultimately what caused Wendla's death. And so Hope, this is the moment where, as Wendla's mother, talking with the doctor, and you find out that Wendla is pregnant. And in that moment, this is a moment where, in one performance, one audience member audibly spoke out, "Oh my God," as she watched you transition from learning the news to then that picture that we just saw, where now I'm going to deal with the news. So Hope, Marissa, talk to us about that moment and the creation of that moment and what that meant for each one of your characters as we deal with truth.
Yeah. So this moment in the show was my favorite moment in the show because it was just I remember when we first blocked it, Paul always has us run through our scenes just first off, just to see what we do naturally. And we ran through it, and I just love the detail that went on in the scene to make this come across so real and so authentic, and exactly how this mother would react to like Wendla. Like, I've never told her this. Where'd she learn it from? Who else do I need to deal with? You know? And it was that slow motion look that Paul now calls the hope. that yes, we have already come across this in some more shows too. That really set the mood for the audience and for myself as an actor too. We used this technique that called viewpoints, where I just it's a class taking a GCPA. Go sign up for it for next year.
Thank you.
There's your plug. Register now. But it's just this moment where there's so much going through this woman's head right now. Confusion that cannot happen, but now it's happening, and it's just total like blank anger that comes across, and it's just this build of suspense where I have to walk like all the way across the floor to get to Marissa, this poor little child who has no idea what is going on. And yeah, and another thing about this scene is that Paul, in the script, it was written in the stage directions that the mother slaps Wendla across the face, and Paul took that out of our blocking, which oh my gosh, I just felt worked. It just kept that intense emotion going, so there was never a release of it. and I think it also has to, because Zion has a scene like that with Moritz, and another scene. We wanted to keep this like separate from, because that is such an impactful scene too. But there was so much tension in that scene, and none of it released until I walked off stage, for me as an actor at least. So yeah, it was there's honestly, we could pick apart this scene for hours just talking about it. But I'll let Marissa share her side of it now.
Oh my gosh, it was truly so terrifying to be on the other side of it, and to like look into Hope's eyes. Oh my gosh. But for me, my response to like being scared is to either laugh or to just be like frozen. So obviously for that, I was just like completely just like frozen. And like Nathan and I talked about, like it was really not hard to act in that scene, because Hope was just like utterly terrifying. And there was even a time when we were rehearsing and Hope accidentally, like she was so in it and she spit in my face a little. And normally like I would totally like laugh at that and be like whatever, like probably break character. But without any release, like Hope said, it was just so intense. And it was like we were holding our breaths that whole entire time. So like thank God for Whispering, the song that follows that scene, because I felt like that song was sort of Venla like releasing the breath that she had been holding that whole time with that interaction with her mom. But yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite moments in the whole show, because it was just like everything stood still and I could even feel like the audience behind me just like frozen as well. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I just have to add to that really quick, is in that moment when I walked across the stage, it was deathly silent. You could hear the spotlight moving with me as I walked across the stage. And another thing I wanted to mention is that the minute I walked off stage, I had to come back on as Melchior's mother in 12 seconds or less. So that was also that is just it is like what we talked about earlier with playing so many different characters. It was really nice release though, to be able to be that and then have a reason to let it all go and go into the next scene.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the holding of your breath and that tension that was there, the deathly silence that was in that room. I remember working on that scene, and any actor, I mean, even myself, silence on stage is hard. It is so hard because we want to fill those silences as human beings. And as you mentioned, you could hear the spotlight as it creaked slowly with you as you were moving. And you could feel, you could see the audience lean in to see what was happening. And there were so many moments like that where you embrace the silence throughout the story, so much so that there were certain numbers where the audience didn't applaud after a number because they were so invested in the emotion of what was going on. And we were talking earlier about some of the talkbacks, and there was one talkback where one of the audience members even asked, do you recognize how much of a compliment it is when an audience doesn't even applaud after a number because they are so invested emotionally in what you're doing? Because, I mean, it's musical theater, right? Like, you're supposed to applaud after people sing and dance. But in this story, there were so many moments where the audience didn't. And it was because of moments like what you, Marissa, and Hope were just talking about, is that tension that was there that never got a release. And the audience didn't release it either. So let's talk about a different moment where there is a release, but not in a positive way. So Zion, the scene, and Hope mentioned it before when we talk about pulling the slap out of that scene with Vendla and her mom, and the only time that we see Moritz and his father. Talk to us about putting that scene together where we literally see the abuse that Moritz is taking from his father.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I remember when we first put it together. We were first putting together the scene, or blocking it. Very choppy. It was very choppy on my part anyway. Just because I found it difficult when I was still getting the lines down, and we were very close up and personal. We had to use like our whole bodies for the scene, so there was like no room for holding the script. But besides all that, it was difficult emotionally, just because I hadn't played, something where I was that close to somebody inflicting like pain like that, which is something, that I've been thinking about as the teenager that I am. I'm like, if I, inevitably have kids, I was like, how would I discipline my kids? Like I'm sitting here thinking to myself, throughout the course of my life, I don't know how I would be able to, discipline my kids like my parents have done with me. Like, I don't know how I, would do that. And having to do that up close and personal, with someone I developed a friendship with, Sean and I were cool. And, having to slap him repeatedly was hard for me. And because, Sean was that's an interesting angle or moment in time. Sean was really authentic with his reactions, which is great for the show. Pretty difficult for me. I was like, Jesus, like, did I actually hit you at one point? I got afraid that I was actually hurting him. But no, he was just reacting so, like I said, authentically to it. And this is just in the blocking. This is just like at the beginning, when we're first getting it, we decided to like ball up his shirt. I remember, Paul, you were like, we're going to do this. And I was like, dang, like, whoa. I was like, slow down. But, no, we blazed forth. He said, you're gonna twist this shirt. You're gonna pull him in. You're gonna pull him in, and then you're gonna beat him down. And in the act of not only hitting Moritz, but hitting him to where he is in a fetal position at the end of the scene was that much more difficult to do. But it's one of my favorite parts of the show, ironically speaking, because of that utter silence. Every now and then, but we try to be as safe as possible. But yeah, and I wish he was here to give his side of the story, because it's so different coming from his perspective. But I know it was really difficult for me, where I had to take some time to just ground myself afterwards, and after doing the scene on stage and in rehearsal, it just takes like a little mental break, go do something fun. But it was so impactful, and the audience response was great, and something that I really looked forward to at that moment, because then it just let us know that we were doing something one, right, and two, meaningful. So yeah, it was hard, and anyway.
Yeah, you talk, Zion, about how difficult it was, and I kind of created some of that difficulty because of the way that I wanted that to be so tight, because because it just felt, and you and Sean, as you continued to explore what this relationship was, we continued to find that Moritz's father was unapologetic.
Yeah.
And we talk about that menace that some of the adult figures had. He used that closeness by pulling Moritz in as a menacing moment.
Yeah.
And then it created a problem that I had to fix, which was safely getting the slaps across in a way that Sean could prat and actually have that and still be able to act.
Yeah.
And
I forgot about the whole angle we had to create and the hand slapping. We were basically high-fiving on stage, which was
it was basically high-fiving on stage, and we, you know, I know because I was very particular about this moment, in the fact that I wanted to make sure that from every angle, the audience could not see the prat. That they felt like it was real. And what was so great about your work and Sean's work throughout the process of that was that you understood what we were trying to do for the audience. And so you brought ideas to that moment as well that helped problem solve and helped make sure that the impact that this moment has to have on the audience and the impact that it has to have in the storytelling for Moritz, that it all worked and that it all went off safely, number one, but then effectively. And what you mentioned, there were several times too that right after that scene, I would jump up and, Sean, are you okay? That was almost too real. Like, it's great work, but like I really felt like something went wrong.
I remember Sean always jumping up and he's fixing his shirt that's all twisted. He's like, "Yeah," he's like, "I'm good." The contrast was hilarious. He'd be like, "Yeah, I'm fine. No, you're good. Yeah."
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I don't know, that was just a really special moment. You know, you create, you know, out of the discomfort, you create, like, I don't know, a bond. We were like, "Yo, we're gonna do this. We're gonna get through it. You know, we're just gonna blaze through the scene." We would like talk about it, but like backstage together, we were like, "Oh, it's coming up. It's coming up." Really excited about it.
And there's one more thing that I wanted to point out about that moment. And you alluded to it, but I want to shine a light on it. Was the difficulty for you as an actor in inflicting that type of pain in a moment like that on another human being?
Yeah.
And so often, sometimes audiences, sometimes artists, we get so focused on the person who is receiving that combat on stage that we're so concerned about them and are you safe, are you okay, that we were sure through the process to make sure that you were okay during that as well. And what I saw develop was you and Sean, after each time, you both checked on each other.
Yeah.
And that is just the sign of artists who not only care about the story, but they care about the individual as another human being who is experiencing a moment that is very difficult. So I want to thank you for bringing everything that you did to that moment, because it had significant impact on the storytelling and on the audience. So I've guided the conversation towards specific moments thus far. I want to open the floor to you all. Are there specific moments that were impactful for you throughout the process, whether it was rehearsal, performance, talkbacks? were there things that when you look back, you just think, you know what, that was something that had a really big impact on me? And if so, share that with us. Marissa, I saw you nodding your head a little bit there, so I think that an idea came right away.
Yeah, totally. Whenever I'm doing a show or a review, any sort of report or performance, I like to think about what the point of it is and how it's going to affect the audience and what I want the audience to take away from that. And honestly, finding that for Spring Awakening was, at first it was pretty difficult for me because there are just so many things that are happening, so many different storylines. So I was like trying to think like, okay, like what's Venla's point of all of this? Like what is her story going to give to other people to take away from this experience? And during a talk back one time, there was someone in the audience and they said that, hi, like, so I just want to start off, like, I'm pro-life, like, I used to be pro-life, like, I, like, didn't understand the other side, like, pro-choice, whatever, and this really opened my eyes, and that is that, from her point of view, she was saying how this opened her eyes that, like, wow, if these things aren't available, then people are still going to try and get like abortions a different way and hurt themselves. And some will pass away, some will have permanent damage, whatever. So she really talked about how this made her realize the consequences of not allowing people to have the resources that they need, which my t-shirt said for Purple Summer, it said pro sex ed. And that was like such an important moment for me. I remember just being like, I was just shocked. Like I told her, I was like, thank you. Like, I hate to be like, oh, I love like validation is awesome, but like that totally like made me feel valid and feel like I did what I was trying to do in telling Venla's story and starting a conversation for her. So yeah, that was definitely one of the most special moments because I was hoping that was going to get to someone, and it did. So that was really amazing for me.
Yeah. I remember that moment very vividly as well. And I think it's important to share. There may be some people who are watching who don't know the entirety of the story of Spring Awakening. So I just want to quickly recap that Venla's character, after she gets pregnant with Melchior's child and mom finds out, mom takes her to have what today would be considered the equivalent of a back alley abortion. And that procedure ultimately is what causes Venla's death. And so that's why that was the t-shirt. And well, part of the reason, because the first question that you ask mom is, where do babies come from? At the very beginning of the show. And so that message, like you mentioned, is so important that, you know, regardless of where we stand, resources are important for the safety of individuals. So Nathan, how about yourself? What is something that really stuck with you?
Honestly, it was the same thing. But I do know there was another time, I think it was after our second show or something, and for some reason, Song of Purple Summer just really hit differently. And as soon as we went backstage, I started bawling because I just, I don't know, I just think this show talks about so many important things. And, you know, it talks about like LGBTQ being normalized and stuff, which still somehow is an issue. And then it talks about, you know, educating your kids on sex and being able to have those conversations with them. It talks about physical and sexual assault and so many other things. And I don't know, it's just something about it just really overcame me, and I got really emotional about it. And I don't know, that probably for me is what it was.
Nathan, thanks for sharing that, because sometimes audience members, people who aren't part of the production or who don't see what's going on backstage, they can sometimes forget that the story has an impact on the artists as well. And you know, and different nights, like you said, different nights can have different impacts. And thank you for sharing that story. Zion.
I thought I had it. Okay. Well, yeah. Yeah. I had a brain fire. A part of the show that, you know, was constantly, like, without fail, impactful or like got me all emotional was the funeral. Mostly because, you know, my character had to be, not mostly, not even mostly. One, my character had to be emotionally, you know, vulnerable for that moment. But, you know, Miaz and Zion was like struggling. I remember, you know, and because it was such a fast turnaround. I guess, you know, as soon as I left, I'll start with, you know, the actual funeral. So, you know, funeral was hard. I remember, you know, having to take that moment to myself. I had some sad music ready to play in the background, or, you know, like backstage, just to like ground myself from all the moving parts that were happening, you know, backstage. Because, you know, a lot of people were moving. We were getting the show, you know, you were rolling the show out. So I remember I had to ground myself in this very dark room. I would go out there, emote. And it was just, you know, seeing everybody pass the casket, the hole in the ground, like, was really hard through the tears that, you know, I had to create for the character, which really wasn't that hard to create because, you know, everybody had made the atmosphere so tender. So tender. And it was like, I don't know, like that was one of the first times I could really, you know, when people say that they can feel what's around them and give it a texture, I was able to give the energy in the room a texture. And it was really interesting to take note of as I was acting. But yeah, people would go around, drop their roses. I remember Ilsa, who, you know, Olivia played, she would like fall. And that was a really hard thing to watch, again, through the tears. But, you know, that moment when I, you know, look at my hand that, you know, was shaking. I'm even shaking now. It's shaking now. You know, when I look at it, that, you know, broke Zion down, you know, underneath, you know, Stiefel. So that part without fail gets me in my feels. And having to go off stage and then costume change and come right back out was really hard because I'm like wiping away tears as I'm getting dressed in the dark. And I would have to act, I was still getting myself together walking up the stairs before the lights came on. I remember that was a part of my routine every day. So yeah, that like I said, without fail, that part gets me every night, got me every night. So
yeah. Zion, you got a lot of people every night in that moment. And you mentioned this moment, you know, when your hand trembling and dropping the flower into the grave. That's one of the nuances in the physicality that you connected to Moritz's father. Talk to us a little bit about what that moment was with your hand at the end of the scene where you beat Moritz, and then at the end of this scene at the funeral when you drop the flower into the casket.
So yeah, so during, you know, the only scene where we see Moritz and his father, you know, I have a slapping hand is what I called it, where I repeatedly, you know, slap Moritz down into submission, really. And I don't know, I was very aware of my hand for that scene because it was tingly from the constant, you know, claps, you know, that I was making with Sean's hand. And so when I was in the funeral scene and I was holding the rose, I don't know, when I went to go put it down, I don't know, I was just put it down over, Moritz's casket. I was just I don't know, I guess I was just hyper aware of my hand at that point, and I realized that I was putting the rose down with the hand I had used to beat him into submission, which is like the only, those were the only two connecting scenes that we had seen, Moritz and his dad. And so as a character, as the character, I was like, that's a continuity that I can string together, because I'm putting the rose down with this hand. And I just remember looking at it, and I thought it would be very in character. I actually really happened very organically, just throughout the course of the scene, where I just look at it and kind of think, because I remember you said, like, you realize, Zion, that you're the cause, or like you could have done something different, or if you had done something different, he may still be here. So on that course, of thinking in my head, like what happened? I'm like, what happened? And then I realized, well, this is what happened, or like the mentality, or that was the realization that he went through. That he realized his mistake, but at that point it was too late, which is why I broke down even further, looking at my hand. It was really a really organic moment that I'm glad I found, and I'm glad that we cultivated and emphasized. Because it was impactful to me, very, very impactful to me. I was like, whoa. I was almost like, whoa. Like, whoa. That was a little too intense, first go around. I was like, that would cause somebody to break down, that realization. So yeah, that's a little bit about that moment.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, really quick, just to go off of Zion for that funeral scene, that's definitely one of the ones that comes to my mind, because during, right, Lori? Yeah, I know, right? During the show, like, there's always things happening backstage. People are running to quick change. People are like talking in the dressing room. People are doing this, doing that, going about their time, doing their thing. Right before the funeral scene, every time backstage was always so solemn, because like we knew, like, just the mood and everything changed. And I think that is, for me, that is what made it so impactful too, is not only what was happening on stage, but backstage too, because we were all like, oh, okay, yeah, here it comes. Like, this is going to be it again. Another thing that is another character that I played, which only came on for a couple lines, was I was the voice of Martha's mother in Dark I Know Well. And Zion had a line as the father. And we were not on stage for that. We were backstage, just vocals. And that had to be my least favorite part of the entire show. But I mean, don't get me wrong, like, it was just, well, and it was also one of the most impactful for me too, because I remember the first time I did it in rehearsal and realizing, like, that is the dialogue that this girl hears in her head over and over and over again. And I'm just like, ugh, oh my goodness. Like, it was just such a, it was a horrible feeling to have to do that, but it was so impactful because I'm like, wow, like, that just really connected me more to that character too, and more to the other children characters. Yeah. Oh, what was the other one I was gonna say? I don't remember. That was my funny character. That was the comedic relief of the show. Yeah. Yeah, that was a very impactful moment for me. We had some fun with that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Hope, what you talk about with that line as Martha's mother, what's also so disturbing, and I think why you were so impacted in a negative way about this moment, is because it's her mom condoning the abuse that dad inflicts upon her. And as a compassionate human being, you and everyone else recognize just how wrong that was and that is when a parent turns a blind eye on purpose to the abuse, and particularly when it's sexual and physical abuse of a child by a parent. And it's hard. It's hard. So I want to talk here about the t-shirts at the end. So Marissa, you were talking about this earlier and what Wendla's character represented. So talk to us about the t-shirts that you had and the impact that that t-shirt had on you as an individual, that moment, and then we're going to close out our conversation here tonight.
I can start since I sort of already went. Like I said earlier, mine said pro sex ed, and yeah, I really hope that started a conversation about what happens when you try to shield people from the information that they need to know and that is going to be exposed to them eventually. And I took some notes before this, and something I wrote down is that Wendla can be seen as like the victim of the story, but she's not a victim because of what she's doing is wrong. She's a victim because she wasn't guided to do these natural things by someone that knows like the consequences of these actions. I think that if in another world, like if a teenage girl has these conversations with someone who is older and has experienced these things and knows the consequences, that these things are natural and they're going to happen, but there's a safe way for them to happen. So I think that Wendla can be seen as like a rebellious teen, but she can also be seen as a teenager that's doing everything right, but has been shielded by so much that she just doesn't know what she's doing is wrong. So
yeah. Thanks, Marissa. So Nathan, your character didn't wear a modern day t-shirt. You were in the costume of Melchior through the end. So talk to us about what that impact was.
Yeah. So like I said before, I felt like for me personally, Purple Summer was kind of like this glimpse into what one day will be, and kind of a hope for Melchior. And on top of that, I think not having a costume, for the audience, maybe seeing all these people come out, all the actors come out in t-shirts that not only are modern day, but they're also calling out a specific movement from right now. It could be easy to be like, oh, look, me too. And then like, that's it. But I think having at least like one anchor in the story is important to say, oh, well, like for somebody, like let's say somebody doesn't have somebody in their life who is a member of like the LGBTQ community. Well, they do in Hanshin and Ernst. They've seen these characters and they've seen their lives for 2 hours and some of the things they struggle with. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And, with all the issues we've been talking about that are in the show, they have somebody that they can think of and say, well, I've seen some of like a little bit, just a glimpse of what really this issue is. And so even if they don't have any real life experience with it, they can kind of think about it through this lens.
Yeah, and you helped specifically with some of the t-shirts. Because when I came up with the idea, I knew many of the characters, but there were some characters that we struggled with. What what is it linked to? Like where does this stand? And you very specifically helped us with Hope's t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. I was just actually, I completely forgot. I don't even, did I know that Nathan helped with that? That's like new news to me. It might not have been at the time, but good job, Nathan. Yeah, because I had so many, I played so many different characters, adult characters, and I connected to so many of, well, I was a factor in so many of the young people's stories. They weren't sure if they wanted to connect to me, weren't sure which one, like Melchior, Venla, Moritz, any of them. So my t-shirt said, tell everything, because it's kind of like a swap up between all of them. Like Melchior's mother did tell him everything, like let him explore like all of what this is, let him know what all this was that was going on. And Venla's mother told her nothing and sheltered her to an extreme, and it shows the side of each of them where like you should tell everything. You should let your kids know like what is going on, what this is. If they ask a question, you should answer it honestly, but you also should know when to stop for now, because that's something that Melchior's mother also deals with Melchior sharing this with Moritz, and Moritz not being able to handle it. And Melchior's mother has a line along the lines of like, maybe this book that you're reading is just not right for him right now, or like he hasn't grown up like you have, and things like that. So yeah, that's what my t-shirt is about. Props to Nathan.
Absolutely. And Zion, you're wearing your shirt from the show.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I thought it'd be pretty fitting for the occasion. Yeah.
So Zion, talk to us about the impact of bringing Black Lives Matter into this story here in Spring Awakening, a year before where we are right now, and the importance of where that stands today.
Oh boy. Oh boy. I don't know. I was just very happy that I was in the conversation, because, you know, while the issue might not have been prevalent in the show, I think, you know, having it lock arms with, you know, the other issues that, you know, kids, and not even just kids, you know, people face in general, I think I'm very appreciative that you decided for this shirt, because you could have very easily said, you know, no, we're not going to, it's not relevant. You know, you could have very easily said that. And I was very appreciative that you consider, why don't we have it in the show and have it be a pillar in, like, I don't know, the structure of, you know, all the shirts, you know, created of important movements that, you know, are necessary to be seen and heard and talked about, and given just as much attention as the other. And so, yeah, coming a year before the national protest today, one, I'm just glad I have the shirt, you know, to be able to wear out there. I'm happy I have it, but I don't know, I'm glad that it was in the show. I'm just very appreciative. I don't know what to say. I think I'm happy that, you know, it was there along with all the others. So, you know, even while it wasn't relevant, you still let, you know, we all took a step back from the show, and, you know, it was like, in life, these are the things that, you know, these stories, these issues, are important. And Black Lives Matter got just as much representation as everybody else did. So I was very, very happy.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, it was an opportunity that we saw to recognize not only movements that are happening right now that were directly in the story, but recognizing what youth are doing today.
Yeah.
And the movements that are important to the young generation, your generation, who is fueling members of my generation to take action, and recognizing that there are so many more things that are important. And we wanted to take an opportunity to recognize that, because the movements that were started in 1891, the ideas of what happened in the story when it was first written, 1891 is the source play for Spring Awakening. And the fact that we're still dealing with all of it and more is what we wanted to try to represent. Is that it goes beyond the story, and it goes beyond just these movements.
Yeah.
In regards to Me Too and sex ed, and Moritz wearing My Story's Not Over.
Yep.
In regards to suicide awareness and suicide prevention. And it goes beyond just that. And we have Black Lives Matter. We have the LGBTQ community. We had the blanks to represent everything that we're not talking about yet, or that we don't know about yet. And that's important to us, to make sure that we continue to be a voice for our community that wants to see the change that the world needs. And I'm very proud to have said that I've been able to take this journey with all of you and the entire cast of this production. So as we're drawing to a close here, as we do with everything, tell us, why should young artists take classes, audition for shows at GCPA? So Nathan, go ahead.
So like I was saying earlier, whenever you're at GCPA, you're there because you are as an individual. It's not because you're some kind of like space filler or anything like that. It's because you bring something unique to the table that the team sees in you, and once in the shows and in the classes and just in the environment of GCPA in general. And it's nice because they really let you know that you are special and important to the production, and they go out of their way to make you feel welcome, even if you're brand new to the community.
Thanks, Nathan. Oh.
So there's so many things, but I've said them all before. I'll say them 100 times. But one of the biggest things about GCPA that I find is very unique to them is they let you play with your own material when you are in a show. And this especially went for Spring Awakening, and it goes for every single show too. Every show I've been in or stage managed for them, they, like I mentioned earlier, they let you try the scene yourself first. They see what happens naturally and what you do to make it your own, and then they guide you from there, and they let you share your opinion or your thoughts on what this could be. And it's all about collaboration in the shows and in classes too. Like you are always heard at GCPA, and you're never just you're a opinion or your thoughts or your ideas of things are never just pushed to the side. They're always valid as they are anyway, you know, but they let you know that. And, you know, like on top of all this deep stuff that we do, we have like a lot of fun too. Like tech weeks get insanely crazy. Like in our Spring Awakening group chat, we've been sending videos constantly over this past week because it's been a year like to Tech Week and Performance, and it's popping up on our memories. So yes, Steph, when I stage manage, Stephanie and I always get Vanilla Dr. Pepper's Tech Week. It's our tradition. Yeah, and you know, like Stephanie puts tape on her face, and Paul like has full body ideas, and like it's just so sorry, I shouldn't expose you like that.
So Stephanie's apparently on a date with Denial.
Didn't mean to expose you like that, Stephanie. But yeah, it's just like, it's so much fun, and you learn, you will come out of every class or every rehearsal knowing something new about your craft or about yourself, and you will make lifelong friends like every single one of you are, and you will make lifelong mentors and friends with the directors too, and it is just the place to be. So.
Thank you, Hope. Zion.
Okay, so I first got involved with GCPA like on the latter half of my high school career. I was a junior, and it can be difficult to kind of put into words the experience that you encounter at GCPA, but I'm going to try. And when you work, do things at GCPA, I can say for myself, in my experience, that I have not seen, another setting, a work setting, where there's such a comfort and such a trust between, everybody at, there, than I have at GCPA. It's been I've had wonderful friendships be created, there. It goes beyond just the technical aspects of, acting and theater. It's a home for a lot of kids. Like, I'm sure everybody who's interacted with GCPA will tell you that, they see it as another home, or they see it as a place of safety or comfort or just friendship, bubbly, happy friendship. So there's that aspect. And then on the technical side, like Hope was saying, there is a cooperative, collaborative environment that the staff at GCPA foster when creating work and shows and things like that, and in classes, and it's really inspiring. I remember when I did my first show, Violet, it was Paul was like, for this scene, or this particular scene, do it. And I was like, what do you mean? Like Hope was saying, he lets you see how it goes organically. And that was new for me. I hadn't done that before. And it was a struggle at first. But now I think it's a practice that's actually very helpful. You lead the scene in the direction that you most naturally, fall towards. And I think that's a very beautiful practice that, Paul instilled in me. And the collaborative work, like I said, is very inspiring, because new ideas are created from bouncing, off of everybody who's in the scene or people who are not in the scene. Ideas are encouraged and ideas are shared, and they lead to other ideas. And so we've made beautiful, beautiful scenes together from different perspectives that, we wouldn't have otherwise. And, Paul's not afraid, to hear you out, he honors, your creativity, our creativity, and the choreography that we always do is great, period. And I don't know, the technical aspects are very enriching, and they build upon, whatever skill set that you are, all your skill sets, really, on top of being a second home. Like, it's great. It's great. It's great. So I could talk forever about it. I'll say it time and time again, but GCPA really is the place to be.
Thank you, Zion.
Of course.
Oh my gosh, all of the above. Also, I growing up like in the St. Louis theater scene, I kind of bounced around between companies. Like I was always like, I moved like houses when I was in St. Louis, like in the midst of my performance career, and just was all over the place. And so I was in Hairspray. That was my first show. And then I wasn't in any shows with you guys. I took a few dance classes here and there, which were amazing. And then Spring Awakening. And something that I think is really special is the way that even though we hadn't seen each other in such a long time, like I felt so welcomed and encouraged, and I could really feel that everyone on the creative team like was rooting for me. Like I feel like you guys root for everyone and want to see people succeed, which is really important because sometimes people want to see people fail in the performance world. But it's very, very obvious that you want people to succeed, and you are creating such an amazing environment. I think that it's like the perfect place to go, even if you're not super serious about musical theater. But if you are, like, it is very professional and top tier, but also so loving and so fun, like some of the most fun I've ever had. And yeah, it really is a family. I remember I was in St. Louis. I go to college in Boston, and I was in St. Louis for an audition, and I totally forgot all my sheet music, and I had to call back like at Webster. And so I emailed, I think it was Stephanie I emailed, and I was like, can I come print some sheet music like really fast? So I like ran over and like printed it, and it was just so nice to be there for like, I was there for like 10 minutes. Everyone was in Urinetown rehearsals. But yeah, that's so special to me. It's like to really have someone to go back to, because I mean, I don't live in St. Louis anymore, but knowing that I have a small theater community in GCPA is really, really comforting and something that I'll treasure forever. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Marissa. We're all very grateful to have you part of our family. So Marissa, Zion, Hope, Nathan, thanks so much for spending some time with us. Everybody who has stayed for the 2.5 hours of our supersized conversation around Spring Awakening. Our conversation tonight was longer than the production itself. That's how much we could talk about this story, which is super cool. So everyone, thank you so much for spending some time with us. We'll be back again over the weekend, and we'll see you next time. Have a great night, everybody.